Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in again to the Non-Compos Mentis podcast. Today we have a very interesting subject for episode 2 of this Saturday morning weekly podcast. Sorry if I sound a little bit tired. I just got, an hour ago, I got off a 6-hour shift at work without a break, so that's why I sound a little bit tired. You know why. So today, let's get right into it. A lot of you may have heard people talk about how ridiculously highly paid sports players are. And I'm talking about leagues such as the MLB or the NFL or the NBA. According to several articles that I found, the Major League Baseball's highest players last year, John Lester and Clayton Kershaw received $30 million in 2015. They're both pitchers who play about 1 in every 5 games for the 162 games in the season, which is about $937,500 per game, and I found that in Forbes magazine. The National Basketball Association's highest player, who's Kobe Bryant, received $25 million in the 2015-16 season. If he played in every single game, he would make $304,878 per game. And I found that on ESPN. And the NFL's highest player, Aaron Rodgers, received $22 million in the 2015 season. Assuming, again, that he played in every game, he would make $1,375,000 per game, and that was on the official NFL website. So those are some facts. So you might say, that is ridiculous how high these folks get paid just for playing a sport. It's really nothing. It's not like they're, going out and helping people who are starving or, doing a charity or anything. They're just playing, a worthless game. It really has nothing to do with anything. And a lot of people have suggested that salary caps should be put on the individual sports so that players can't get paid past a certain level. But I did some thinking about this, and if you really think about the repercussions of these salary caps, it really would be serious results from doing this. And today we're going to assume that these caps on salaries would be very large-scale caps, not they can't go past the highest players now. We're thinking you have to go below that, so maybe halfway below the now highest paid salary. So we're thinking about really low caps here that would more majorly influence things. So just to let you know, there are 3 ways that these caps would affect the games that are played. They would affect the players, the teams, and the entire league. First of all, let's talk about how these caps would influence the players. Of course, since the players were the ones getting these caps, it would really limit how much they got. The players who had these caps were paid more, and then they got cut. Wishing to make up for the cuts would take more and more commercial TV and special appearance deals. This would cause them to miss more practices, which would probably cause them to get progressively worse at the sport they play. After this, one of 5 things could happen. The managers of the teams could do one of 5 things. First of all, they could sell or trade the players off for small amounts of money or newer players, less experienced players. These players would get even lower salaries than before and would resign for higher paying jobs such as broadcasters and analysts. 2, the managers could sell these players to the minor leagues where they would get paid even less and would no longer be able to get commercial deals because no one wants to hear a commercial about somebody who was really good and now they're really bad, unless they retired really quick so that nobody really knew that they were in the minor leagues. Third of all, the players could get paid less and less until they simply retired and became broadcasters or just retired from the sports field altogether. 4, these players could demand to be paid high salaries under the table. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but the players who got caught would be suspended, maybe even banned from the league. And number 5, the teams could keep the players and not change and just pay them the cuts, which the results of that will be discussed. Now, so those are the results on the players. Basically, they would get worse and worse, and they would have to be ditched or kept, which would result in the team getting bad. The thing is, these players would probably sign longer contracts since they knew that they couldn't get any higher anywhere else. So they sign longer contracts with these teams, and then they would force the teams to keep up with their contracts, which would force the teams to get worse. That would be one repercussion of the salaries. Now let's talk about the effects of the caps upon the teams that the players were on. The teams who kept the players would get progressively worse, and their odds of winning pennants would be reduced. To keep players, some teams would pay players under the table, like we said. Once caught, these teams would be disqualified from any playoffs or whatever pennants. Well, more like the players and whoever was paying them would be disqualified from any payments, and anything that any pennants they won while paying players illegally would be stripped from them, and the teams that weren't as good as them would be given the pennants or the titles. The managers, owners who arranged these deals would be banned from the professional organizations, or they would be suspended. Of course, if just the managers were caught in the scheme, only they would be banned. However, if both the owners and the managers were involved, they would be the owner would be forced to either sell the team or withdraw the entire team from the professional league. Either way, the owner would not be allowed to manage the team until a solution was resolved. So basically, the owner would either have to sell it, or they'd have to resign the entire team, because it's up to them because they own it, which would obviously negatively influence the fans and the following of that particular sport. The team would therefore have very limited management, and their odds of winning the pennant would go even further down. Another possibility that could happen to the team is that, again, they sign longer term contracts, and then the teams would get worse because they can't ditch the players who are doing worse and worse. And finally, let's talk about the effects of the caps on sports in general. Because sports teams would become progressively worse, less and less people would be interested in watching them. Less and less would watch the games on TV, and even less would buy tickets to see them, because the teams would be getting so bad, and the playoffs, because of all the suspensions, would be just a joke. The sponsors of the clubs would, seeing this reduce in popularity, would cut the funds on these teams. Eventually, unable to generate enough revenue to stay along, the owners would attempt to sell these teams off. Since no one would be interested, they'd either have to sell it off for a really cheap price, or since no one would be interested because it's such a high risk and low income endeavor, they would just have to completely ditch the team and disband it. When enough teams closed down, the entire league would end. Minor leagues would become what major leagues used to be until salary caps were required in that league. The cycle would reoccur as it had in the major leagues. Salary caps would therefore be the end of sports. So next time you hear somebody talk about these salary caps, just think about this. What would have happened? Players would be affected. They would get worse trying to get more money. The teams would maybe pay the players under the table, causing them to be suspended. Sports would just go downhill. The scandals would be ridiculous. People would not be interested, and eventually these leagues would just close down until minor leagues rose up to the major leagues, which would be very interesting, but it wouldn't be good, because the cycle would recontinue when these players became paid high enough, if the caps weren't already there. And remember, these are just theoretical. None of that is based on research. The research from the teams of the players that received the most, I'll put the references in the description if you're watching on YouTube. Remember, I'll try. We haven't created the Facebook page for Non-Compass Mentis yet, but once we do, I'll announce on there when the iTunes podcasts are released, which are the same, but by subscribing to our YouTube channel, you'll get more exclusive content and maybe some video content. So thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate you staying this entire time. It was really an interesting topic for me to research this and think about this. And like if you did like it. And thank you very much. Have a great night, and I'll see you later.